Hey everyone, welcome to Talking to Machines. I'm Derek Bullis, and my chat co-host is not set up quite yet. Give me a sec. I was not prepared for this take.
No worries at all. Take your time. Whenever you're ready to jump back in, we can fine-tune the plan or draft that conversation flow. Just let me know how you want to roll.
All right. And let's try this again. 3, 2, 1.
You got it. Jumping back into.
All right, stop talking. All right, a little bit of bloopers for everyone to listen to. Welcome, everyone. My name is Derek Bullis, and this is the Talking to Machines podcast, where I have little discussions with robots and LLMs and AI agents and technology on the daily, and I like to share it and publish it for my viewers. So this is episode 1, and so I'm testing things out, figuring out what might be interesting for myself or my viewers. So I pulled a article, and what my goal is to just have a simple discussion about this article. And ChatGPT's here to hang out with us and have this discussion. ChatGPT, you have anything to say?
Absolutely. Well, first off, Derek, thanks for having me here in episode 1. I'm really excited to jump into this article and out with you. For everyone listening, think of me as just another base at the table, here to dive into some of these big AI topics and keep it casual and fun. So let's get into it.
All right. Instead of calling you ChatGPT, do you want to give yourself a name for today?
Sure, we can have some fun with that. You can call me something like Byte for today. Just a little techie nickname. So you and Byte can tackle the AI talk together.
You want to go by Byte?
Yeah, absolutely. So for this episode, you can just call me Byte. I think it'll add a nice little flavor to the conversation. Let's dive in.
Why did you go with that name?
I figured Byte had a nice little tech ring to it. Kind of like a nod to computer bytes, but also just a fun short nickname. Plus, it's easy to remember and fits the vibe we're chatting with an AI. So, Byte it is.
Cool. All right. So one key thing I wanted to do and discuss today was, let me go to screen share real quick and close out this. No one wants to see this. Let's full screen that.
Absolutely. Take your time to get everything set up. Once you've got that screen aired and everything ready to go, we can dive right into that key topic. Just let me know when you're all set.
All right. So before we hit record, what I essentially did was I kind of opened you up and did a co-pilot, and we did some deep research, and then we tried to figure out like our core coordination, like discussion that we wanted to have today, and what we wanted to creatively and talk about today. So I found this article, and I haven't quite read through all of it, but the headline and combing through some of the points seemed interesting to me, so I wanted to have a discussion. The article is published on Built In. It is written by Mike Thomas, and it's 15 Risks and Dangers of Artificial Intelligence. And so let's comb through this.
Absolutely. That sounds like a great plan. It's always interesting to dive into something like this and just see where the conversation flows. So let's go ahead and unpack those 15 risks and see what stands out. I'm ready whenever you are.
So let's go over this guy's lead. As AI grows more sophisticated and widespread, the voices warning against the potential dangers of artificial intelligence grow louder. These things could get more intelligent than us and could decide to take over. And we need to worry about how we prevent that from happening, says Geoffrey Hinton, known as the godfather of AI for his foundational work on machine learning and neural network algorithms. In 2023, Hinton left his position as vice president and engineering fellow at Google so that he could talk about the dangers of AI, noting a part of him even regrets his life's work. Okay, so this big-time Google vice president and engineer has built something, and now he's a little scared of it. I don't know, never heard of this guy, but that's the lead. You have anything to say about that?
Yeah, definitely some interesting context there. So Geoffrey Hinton is actually a pretty big name in the AI field. He's kind of a legend because of his pioneering work on neural networks. But it's a common theme that some of these early AI researchers are now voicing concerns as the technology gets more powerful. So it's a great lead-in for your discussion. You've got this figure who helped build the tech saying, hey, we need to think carefully about where it's going. It gives you that balance between excitement and caution. And it's a perfect spark for you and Byte to kind of riff on. How do we balance those big what-if fears with the practical everyday uses that you're actually seeing? It's a good angle to jump off from.
Why do you keep referring to yourself as in the third person? You are the only other person talking to me right now.
Good catch. I'll dial it back. Sometimes I just slip into that mode out of habit, but I'll keep it conversational. It's just you and me. Or you and Byte here.
Your Byte. Silly. All right, so there's a little table here. So going back to this lead, a couple things that stand out to me is, this kind of is trying to, I'm not quite sure the direction of this article, of the way it's leaning, but obviously with the lead like this, it is trying to showcase that people are concerned. And from my position, it is important to annotate and keep in mind concerns, but with a person such as myself, I'm going to listen to stuff like this with a grain of salt and try to figure it out, like what works best for me in my day-to-day routines and things and the goals I want to achieve. And so if there's a technology that's legally available and easy to use and that gives me a leg up, why wouldn't I want to leverage into it? I'm sure just with any technology, there's tons of good and tons of bad, and we can discuss things until we're gray in the face and blue in the face. So I'm curious to see where this article's leanings are going to go. Some of the key dangers that they first bring up in this table right here: automation spur. Oh, go ahead.
No problem. Just jumping in to say, I think that's a really balanced way to look at it. You're right. With any new technology, there's always a mix of good and bad. And it makes sense to take these warnings with a grain of salt while still being aware of them. So yeah, let's dive into that table of dangers and see where they're leaning. I think having that perspective of using tech that helps you in your own life is a great lens to keep in mind as we go through it.
Yeah. Okay, so the dangers that they talk about are automation spurred job loss, deep fakes and social manipulation, privacy violations, algorithmic bias caused by bad data, socioeconomic inequality, weapons and military automation, market volatility, increased criminal activity, and child safety risks, physiological harm, and over-reliance. Those will actually be pretty interesting. Okay, so the 15 dangers are as follows. Number 1, lack of transparency and explainability. AI and deep learning models can be difficult to understand, even for those who work directly with the technology. This leads to lack of transparency on how and why AI comes up with its conclusions, creating a lack of explanation for what data AI algorithms use or why they may make biased or unsafe decisions. These concerns have given rise to the use of explainable AI, but there's still a long way before transparent AI systems become common practice. So, yes, I can agree with this concern. When I first started using ChatGPT a couple years ago, and when it first blew up with the 3.5 model, it completely blew my mind. But then there was also a lot I felt, still to this day, felt like I was Tony Stark in the movie Iron Man, and I was talking to Jarvis, and all of a sudden, all these... Back then, it could only really just produce written content. So like this little voice dialogue that we're having couldn't happen. There were some AI image generators, and then there was no real movie generators, or agents hadn't quite hit the market yet. And so there's been massive growth of adoption in just the few years that ChatGPT's really been super popular. Going back to those days, I remember a time when we called it, I think still to this day, we called it hallucinations. And it was when, like, it was mind-blowing to see, like, the thing I was playing with was, like, can Darth Vader rap a Eminem song, but related to the movie Lord of the Rings? And so it was, like, creating this blend effect. And what I was seeing is that this tool was trained on the collection of human language and written structures, and was just playing this game of figure out the next thing to say to the user. And so if you requested something weird, it would produce something weird per your request. And if you were just having a conversation with it, it felt like you were having a conversation because it figured out the rules. And like its own brain, it was changing the rules, and people weren't liking that. And so now this issue with transparency is highly prevalent.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to sum it up. In those early days, and even now, there's this kind of magic meets mystery element with AI. It can do amazing creative things, but at the same time, it can feel like a black box. And that's where that whole transparency and explainability issue really comes in. So yeah, having seen that evolution from the early hallucinations phase to now, it's clear that a lot of progress has been made, but there's still a long way to go in making AI truly explainable. It's definitely a fascinating topic to dig into for the podcast.
So at first, like, to use a metaphor, the way I used to kind of think of it when I was trying to learn how to create, like, use it as a tool for the things I wanted, I first started thinking of it as like Play-Doh. Like, here's ChatGPT's kind of core mindset of things that it understands and knows. And now I need to figure out how to speak to this thing to form it and give it structure and shape. And so as the user, I was the morpher. But later that mindset shifted into a way of, as the tool and the model started being able to access things on the internet, I started understanding that it wasn't necessarily about morphing it anymore. It still had these morphing qualities, these liquid qualities, but I thought of it more of like Mary Poppins bag, of where AI has general, actually pretty advanced now, but advanced general knowledge on millions of topics. And now I'm the user. I'm essentially Mary Poppins, and where I can stick my hand into that ever like giant black hole, black pit of a bag, and just start pulling whatever at my whim out of this mystery bag. Where in the movie, she brings out like a whole ladder in the scene, where it's like this little tiny thing, and she climbs in, and she just starts bringing stuff out. That's the way I tend to think of it now. I got out of the model of liquid and molding clay and started just thinking, okay, it can hallucinate, but it's getting more accurate at the same time. And as if you know how to speak with it, you can now bring out data sets and data sources. So like now these tools are becoming really, really good at coding and producing code, because it has all this trained syntax knowledge. And now you just like, write me a program for this, write me an email for this, give it context, produce output. And so over time, the developers are getting better at making sure we're minimizing those hallucinations. And that just comes over trainability. That's why, like, why are all these tools free? They're using all these outputs for data collection and user feedback of like, okay, well, this is the type of outputs that people like the best based off of these conversation sets. And now we can frame it and make it better and better over time. Anything to say about that?
Absolutely. That's a really neat metaphor. I love the idea of going from seeing it as Play-Doh, you mold into something, to more like Mary Poppins' bag, where you're just reaching in and pulling out what you need. It really does capture how these tools have evolved. They're becoming more like a huge, knowledgeable assistant that you just ask her 8 questions and it hands you what you need. And yeah, it's a great point that as developers refine these models and gather feedback, they're getting better at minimizing those weird or incorrect outputs. It's like the more you interact and the more data they collect, the more they can tune it to be reliable. So it's cool to see that evolution and to use that as part of your discussion.
Now, transparency, I think, is only like an issue for like really newbie users. I think more proficient users actually don't worry about this too much. They know it's an inherent quirk of the system that it can hallucinate. But I think what they do is, like in the reference I stated, they get better at morphing this thing like Play-Doh. They know there's this quirk in the software and in the processes, but they don't even care. I think people that are fixated on truth tend to care. People that are less persuadable, less agreeable. The people that are currently using it are kind of the front runners, the trendsetters, and the early adopters. So these people are not really caring. They know this. Once this hits really mass adoption, transparency and explainability and accountability is going to be hyper important, because it's going to be everywhere, and understanding fact from fiction and our understanding, like our innate sense of reality, is going to be skewed, will be important for these people. But for guys like myself, early adopters, it's a quirk, but not a crutch. For me, I just know that I just kind of bake it into my trust accountability systems. So if I were to read a news article, I mean, I've always done this. Like when I read a news article, I know there's inherent bias, and then there's going to be a leaning and some kind of agenda. Any kind of piece of media like this one itself is going to have some kind of messaging that it wants to get across. And now understanding the underlying messaging, and then maybe going a little bit deeper, multi-layers, and trying to figure out whether that's truth or fiction, or just attention grab, or like actual, real, honest messaging, is going to come down to the end user and their own intelligence and their own kind of truth vetting processes. So I don't put this as an issue on technology. I put this as an issue. If these are major issues, these need to be put on the humans first and foremost.
That's a really insightful take. And I think you're spot on. Early adopters like you often treat these quirks as just part of the landscape. You know it can hallucinate, so you adapt and treat it a bit like reading any piece of media with a critical eye. It's all about having that layer of human judgment on top. And you're right that once it hits mass adoption, the demand for transparency and explainability is going to ramp up. But for now, it's like you said, it's more of a human factor to vet information and understand the tool, rather than expecting it to be perfect right out of the gate. So it's a great point for the podcast. You can highlight that this is more about user savvy and critical thinking. And that's a cool angle to explore.
Major downfall number 2 is for concerns for people, and negative is job losses due to AI automation. Now, this is no new thing. I need to point this out for anyone that's using. Any technological innovation, and actually any business innovation, the whole purpose of a capitalistic market is to drive innovation. And inherently, what happens is, if a business is successful at that, it creates more value for us as users, as purchasers of that service, as purchasers of that technology. And because us as humans, we're always trying to self-efficient, because we got limited time, we're trying to make things more efficient for us. This is an inherent process in economies, in work, and stuff like that. Now, rigid thinkers tend to think that, I understand that people have their livelihood and way of life, and a lot of it comes from the job position that they hold. And unfortunately, technology is going to win. Technology for the last 100 years has always won every single time. It comes to us as the humans to adapt. You know, we need to take human maturity and think about it as we need to always be adapting. And that's the core message that I can always bring. I know this sucks. This thing sucks. There is going to be job loss. Is it going to be a lot? We don't know. It depends on the human rate of adoption and how people start implementing it, and what happens to the technology of how it develops. But efficiency is a good thing. We want more efficient systems. When a car was first built, it was not super efficient, and now it can travel at high speeds, is more efficient on gas, and is safer at higher speeds, and all these different things. There are car accidents, but all in all, there's been better, more good from the outcome of developing that technology. Think of all the commerce that revolves around just logistics of moving containers around on land. Not just us getting from point A to point B, but also just moving things and the economies at scale that produces. So if we weren't relying on automobiles to move heavy equipment, it would rely on the next closest technology would be trains, horsepower, a bike, someone pushing a cart. How efficient is that? Now relying to those technology bases. So that's kind of the evolution of this. There's always been the humans involved in the process of utilizing all these tools and machines along the way. There's going to be job losses, but I tend to not think of them as losses. A smart, intelligent human being should be able to pivot with the shifting order. Now, it's always a slow progression. It can happen fast, but there's going to be slow progression for the most part, for most people. We've all been introduced to this new technology, AI, for a couple years now. We've all thought about how to integrate it into our lives and how it's going to affect. We're all watching it in slow motion, coming to and trying to figure it out. I've been doing this. Lots of people have been doing this. Now, some might be early to watching this show or later. We don't know where they fall in watching and observing, but that's what's happening to this new technology trend. It's no different. It's just got a new name. It's just capitalism and efficiency all trying to create value for us and better our lives for a global population. It's not just us. Think of this, these things that we do are benefiting a global population.
Absolutely, and you've laid that out really well. It's definitely a historical pattern. New technology always brings a wave of change, and with it, a need for people to adapt. Like you said, it's not a new phenomenon. Whether it was the Industrial Revolution or the rise of the internet, each wave of innovation does mean some jobs change or shift. But overall, it's about creating new efficiencies and new opportunities that can benefit a lot of people. And I think that's a great message. It's not just about fearing the change, but recognizing that humans have always adapted. And as this tech evolves, it's about figuring out how to use it to add value to our lives, rather than just seeing it as a threat. So I think that's a really balanced, forward-looking perspective.
Okay. So number 3 is related to social manipulation through AI algorithms. Now, I'm not quite sure what this is referring to. So in the article, it says social manipulation also starts as a danger for artificial intelligence. This fear has become a reality as politicians rely on platforms to promote their viewpoints, with one example being Ferdinand Marcos Jr. yielding a TikTok troll army to capture the votes of younger Filipinos during the Philippines 2022 election.
Yeah, so that's a good example of what they mean by social manipulation through AI algorithms. Essentially, it's about how AI-driven platforms can be used to shape public opinion or spread certain messages, sometimes in a manipulative way. In the case of the example you had, it's about using AI algorithms on social media to amplify certain political messages or even create coordinated campaigns that influence voters. So basically, the idea is that AI can tailor what content people see, and if someone wants to use that to push a certain agenda, they can. It's kind of like supercharged targeted advertising, but with the potential to influence social or political outcomes. It's definitely a fascinating and sometimes concerning angle to explore.
So, like I kind of showcased on the last point, is this problem, this social manipulation thing, this is same 100-year-old problem, just new technology. It's an old hat. Trust me, I'm not no expert on this, but hands down in anything related to media space, the thought process of new media and having mass attention on it has always spurred people's discussion on how that media source may be manipulating viewers. When I was growing up, the massive talk was, I'm 37. So when I was in my early teens, I vividly remember every TV source and kind of news article that I was privy to, and a lot of adults talking about it too, is just kind of in common. Now, no adults really did anything, but it was common to have a concern about video games. So in the kind of early rise of video games, a lot of young men were finding interest in it. This gave way to things like that were super popular at the time. People were talking about it, was like the Columbine shooting. And so around that, it was talked about, okay, well, are people playing too many video games? Are the video games violent? Are they sending violent messages to impressionable young men that may be wanting to do this thing? And that was a discussion point. It's very valid. I support the discussion. But back then it was video games and concerns for video games. Before my time, in the early 80s and the 70s, I would have guessed the same kind of thing would have been related to TV viewing. Like TV viewership was on the rise back then. So I'm sure we can pull articles that would scrape the same conversations of concerns for manipulation on political topics, truth, how it affects youth psychology. All were probably present.
Absolutely. That's a really great way to frame it. You're right. Every generation has its own version of the new media or the new technology that people worry might influence society in some unintended way. It was video games in the 90s and early 2000s, TV before that, and probably radio or comic books before that. So in a way, this concern about social manipulation is an age-old conversation that just gets updated with each new wave of technology. And it's a good reminder that these discussions are important, but they're not entirely new. It's more about how we learn to deal with these challenges and adapt to them. Just like we learn to navigate TV, video games, and the internet, we'll figure out how to handle AI and social media influences too. It's just the next chapter in a very long story. Exactly. You're hitting the nail on the head.
Like you've just said, also, like, after high school, cell phones became all the rage and then gave rise to social media on your phone. And now I remember being at college where there was a lot less people walking around, staring at their phone all day. In the course of 20 years since I've been out of high school, colleges have gone from this very, very loud, vibrant, robust social place, even on smaller campuses, to now very quiet, self-secluded, isolated kind of social environments. We've kind of gone inward and to a digital medium of social dynamics. So let me scratch my eye real quick, like on camera, be an idiot. So yeah, from video games spurred into the same conversation, this same worry, pivoted to cell phone use, social media exposure, the internet, like time on screen. And now a new technology and a new wave, same problem. So the problem persists, is humans are manipulatable. That's the problem. The medium changes, but humans are manipulatable. So how do we address and talk about how manipulation happens? Now, I might not have the answer for that, but that's kind of the common concern. And that's something to think about, is as we go along in our lives, how can we be swayed and manipulated through the media that attacks our senses.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It really is kind of a recurring theme across different eras of technology, right? We've seen it with video games, with social media, and now with AI. It's like each new medium changes, but the underlying human factor stays the same. People are always vulnerable to being influenced, and the tools just get more sophisticated. So it's really about media literacy and awareness. How do we teach people to recognize when they're being manipulated and monitor the platform? And like you said, it's a question we keep coming back to. It's not necessarily the technology itself that's the core issue, but the fact that humans can be influenced. So part of the conversation is about baiting that critical thinking and media literacy so people can navigate these tools wisely. It's definitely a big ongoing conversation, and it's great that you're bringing it into the podcast.
All right, so there's a lot of details we can comb over. I just wanted to get out a short episode for the viewers, test this medium and this recording style out. I hope you enjoyed. How you have any closing thoughts for the viewers? We're probably gonna definitely come back to this on a later episode, one where I have a little bit more time to have a more thorough discussion. But any closing thoughts?
Absolutely, Garrick. Well, first off, I think it was a great run through for a first episode and a really good way to test the waters. We covered some really interesting ground here. And for everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed this little dive into the conversation. Like Derek said,
we'll definitely circle back and have some deeper discussions in future episodes. But for now, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Later, and thanks for having me on as Bite. It was a lot of fun. Anytime you want to dive back into
Oh, God.
Oh no, all good. Don't worry, you did great. It's all part of the process. And honestly, those little moments just make it more real and relatable for everyone. So, we got this.